We all have those friends. Somehow, within the same 24 hours, they get more work done. They sleep better, they rest better, and they seem happier. How do they do that? What's the secret? Do they even slack off at all? Hi, I'm Monica Kang, founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox and your host at Dear Workplace. Today, we're going to explore all about how we can do more with less and whether that's asking for too much.
In the past, I didn't trust my future self, and with good reason, because my future self was a procrastinator, just like my current self.
You probably never had to ask yourself these questions because you're like, hey, you're sort of coasting. But as you're thinking, hey, I'm going to do awesomeness, well, then figure out what the pebble in your shoe is.
Having, structure, being able to have the skills and expertise, and also the resilience to switch gears if we need to. And then, this is more for a leadership conversation too, but about be humble and, always have the curiosity to learn about people's kind of where they're coming from and their interests.
So you've got to be willing and ready to adapt, and not just adapt in the year you're in, but you've got to be able to look a few years out and say, where are things going and how am I going to get there? And, otherwise you're just never going to grow. You're prone to downturns and all sorts of things that can happen.
Welcome to Dear Workplace by InnovatorsBox, where we study trends, changes, and challenges at work. I'm your host, Monica Kang, and today I'm eager to learn all about how we can do more with less. Okay, so one thing to learn about me is that in Strength Finders, I'm an ultimate arranger. I love arranging things, collecting inputs, personalizing it, and learning more ways to do all of that better again. It's perfect for me as an entrepreneur where I'm always ideating, arranging, and sorting things out to streamline and optimize as much as I can. How can I do this with fewer steps? How can I make this easier for everyone? What instruction document will get everyone on the same page? Could we do this with less meetings? My love for wanting to do more with less has got to me designing specialized workflows to be more efficient. But I'm not perfect. There is always more to do, which is why this episode was something I was eager to dive into. So I asked for friends who I know always get a lot done. I wanted to make sense of everything they have on their plate. As you hear each lesson from one friend at a time, I'm curious how you'll like to do more with less in your life too. Here we go. Lesson 1. Self-awareness and self-management is key.
It's harder for adult women with ADHD once we get into the workforce, and you have to make a ton of choices every day, often without external metrics and certainly without anyone else checking up on you. So self-management is something I have worked so hard on the last few years, and it's something I'm really proud of myself for where I am now.
Meet Kendall Ratliffe, the Director of Programs at Middle Border Forward in Danville, Virginia. Kendall oversees a lot of communication, projects, and people in her role. As the community and program builder, she is juggling a lot at all times. How do you stay afloat? How do you manage the process? In the end, knowing how you work best is what helps her not only balance, but thrive in the midst of all of these changes. Even ADHD is no longer a barrier as she turns that into her strength to stay focused and agile even further.
I think one element was realizing the energy to start is a lot more than the energy to keep going. So I started setting a 12-minute timer for myself to just, if I can get started, 12 minutes is enough to actually do something. 5 minutes is not. So I couldn't lie to myself about set a 5-minute timer, but 12 minutes is enough to get one email sent. So I started setting a timer, do one thing. And usually once I started, I could keep going. I think recently a big aspect of self-management for me has been realizing, am I trying to do so much planning now, list making or constructing things in my head because I don't trust my future self? In the past, I didn't trust my future self, and with good reason, because my future self was a procrastinator, just like my current self. But proudly, I've realized lately, I can trust my future self because I've consistently been able to sit down and get things done, even when I'm not inspired or don't have much energy. So I know a lot of productivity and management tools say to write lists and that everything should be written down. I have found that that's not exactly what I need. I get compulsive with list making when I am fearful and not trusting my future self. If I just have time to sit down and do it, my brain can figure out what I need to do. So it's kind of a waste, actually, for me to make a lot of exhaustive lists. I heard a quote years ago that really helped me at the time. Your brain is a processor, not a filing cabinet. And so that's why you're supposed to make lists, right? Don't use your brain to be a filing cabinet. But I've found that for me, my brain is a processor and it is a filing cabinet and it is a catch-all. And that's okay. It works just fine as long as I schedule time to sit down and do my tasks.
Kendall's insights on this are powerful. After trying productivity hacks and finding out that they don't work for us, we might be inclined to think that we are the problem. But as Kendall shares, it's a reminder that, hey, all of us find productivity differently and enjoy working in different ways. For some, you may enjoy starting after an easy morning. For others, you enjoy your silent morning and early evening. For others like myself, I like blocking creative days where I have no restrictions to keep me from jumping into different projects whenever I feel like, while setting deadlines for myself. The key is you have to design it and find what works best for you. Just blindly following what others say works is not the way. So take a moment and ask, when do you work best? Why does that work for you? And remember Kendall's note about energy. That's really important. Even for me who loves optimizing, certain days, I'm just lazy. I don't want to do anything. If I force myself to do a lot of work, I'm not only not productive, but even more exhausted. So I map out my workflow such that I include those lazy days, so that my schedule, deadlines, and timelines include breaks. Without it, we'll feel like we're running nonstop, and that's really exhausting. Please, don't do that to yourself. Okay, but Kendall, let's say we don't know where to start with self-management and time management. Where can we start to hone those? Not everyone is simply a 6 a.m. person or a late night owl. We all come from everything in between.
If someone's already struggling with that problem, they might be like me and they have read a ton of articles that they've bookmarked and highlighted and printed and tabbed on how to be productive and how to manage yourself. So if that's where you're starting from, that you've got a lot of tabs open in your mind about what you should do, one thing you can do is look at those resources and just ask, do they apply to my situation? I spent a year learning project management, like the official PMP, project management engineering stuff, and trying so hard to use that as the way to keep myself on track at work. And it kept not working. And instead of going, why isn't it working? I just tried harder to make it work. I was making Gantt charts and trying different software and platforms. It turns out project management is for projects. Go figure. Projects have a start date and an end date. And project management works really well. I'm sure this isn't news to a lot of your listeners. It works really well for software development or making a house where things have to happen in the same order. And there's only so many ways to put a nail into a board. So that's great. I work at a nonprofit. We have programs that cycle, and we want to get people more engaged in the community and to increase their leadership capacity. There are so many ways to do that. There are so many ways to get those nails into a board. And project management is not the way to monitor that. It sounds very silly and basic looking back, but at the time I was so certain this would be the thing that would save me that I just didn't ask why it wasn't working. So if you've looked at a lot of resources to help yourself and it's not working, maybe give yourself permission to cut off some of those resources. And if you're wondering how, ask, is this meant for me? Does this actually fit to my situation? Because like you said a few minutes ago, Monica, not everything works for every person, and that's fine. That's a feature, not a bug.
Indeed, if something isn't working, that doesn't mean it's you. It's just not what works best for you. So get curious. How do you like to work best? What drives you? Why do you care? From there, it could help you explore how you can find the ways you work most effectively and can enjoy doing so. And Kendall is not alone on this. Meet Samson Williams. He likes to describe himself as a serial entrepreneur by accident, as he has an attention to deficit disorder. For him, it's the worst trait as an employee, but the best trait at running businesses. He has several businesses in fintech, crowdfunding, blockchain, cryptocurrency, AI, finance, and future of tech. And lately, he's into space economy. He also teaches these topics as an adjunct professor at the UNH School of Law and Columbia University in the city of New York. One thing you'll hear him say all the time is that the hardest part of anyone's overnight success is the first 10 years. Lesson 2. Invest in yourself today to see results in the long run. There is no shortcut.
Investing in yourself can be as simple as pay for a Calendly link or an Acuity. You're investing in you. Again, CEO of me time, right? Put on your CEO of me time. If you want to talk to me, put it on my calendar. Otherwise, I am literally busy. I have something else to do. In addition to my day job, I have 4 profitable businesses. I actually need to spend time with them. So if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. And part of that is being organized. Back in the day before I got fat and lazy, I used to run marathons. And so here's what I'm going to, trust me, if I can run a marathon, you can run a marathon. I didn't run my first marathon until I was 31. So let me tell you this marathon story, then it's going to make sense. So I was getting on the airplane from DC to Florida. And so I was super stressed because I was a boss at work. You know, I'm at Fannie Mae. I'm at a Fortune 500, Fortune 50 company at the time. I'm crushing. I'm 31. I'm a boss. But my dad was dying on me of bone cancer. And so I would go from DC to Florida, like every other weekend, every week to spend time with him. And I was super stressed. And I was like, what am I going to do about this? And so I was walking down the gangplank. I was like, I'm going to drink myself through this, because it seemed like a good idea because I was looking for some solutions. And as a crisis manager, that's what I did. I came up with solutions for billion-dollar enterprises. Why can't I come up with a solution for me? So I decided I was going to drink myself through this. And I sat down in my seat on the airplane, in a little cubby thingamajiggy on the seat. There was a copy of Runner's World. And I pulled it out and it said, here's how running helps deal with stress. And then I said in my head, okay, I'll try this first. And so it was either drink myself through my daddy dying on me on cancer or run. And so I started running. It seemed like a good idea. I'd never tried it before. And so I would tell them like I was running, doing all this great stuff. I'd share them with little trophies, little medals. They give you a participation medal if you finish a race. And a race can be like 3K, 10K, half marathon, and then full marathon. So anyway, he ended up dying on me, as all superheroes occasionally do. But I started running. And the moral of this story is also super helpful if you can put that negative energy somewhere else, like you take it from your head to your shoulders and just force it out through your feet on the concrete while you're running. Running taught me discipline and project management. Because if you go to run a marathon, you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. You know, you've got 6 months to train. You know, you need to run X number of miles. It changes the way you eat. You stop drinking alcohol because you never want to drink and then go run because it's a bad effect. And so when we go to how do you manage your time now, this is why I love hiring people who run marathons. I know you can project manage, hands down. This is it. It's built in. Oh, which race did you finish? Brilliant. I know you can project manage. I know you can diet. I know you can measure out your meals and know you can take your rest days. I take that same marathon ethos and apply it to work, apply it to your business.
Marathons to project management? I wouldn't have made that connection, but now that Samson shares it, I can see it so intertwined. And it's not just marathons. There are a lot of skills, mindset, and ways we do things that influence one another. Everything from how you take care of your health, to your schedule, to your energy, to how you organize your projects at work. The key is you have to get curious. Samson first realized this because he was curious during that plane ride and was willing to give it a try. If you are not sure where to start, this is why he shares a marathon as an example. Or in my opinion, any regular exercise that you could do.
Your confidence is going to go through the roof. And then you'll see in the rest of your life, it helps you manage your time, manage what you want to do. And when you decide, hey, I'm running marathons, I want to start a business, I want to get a raise, that's your finish line. That's your 26.2 miles. And then you learn how to clear the pebbles between effort and success. Because when you're running a marathon, it's never the boulders or the giant potholes that stop you. It's always the pebble in your shoe. And so emotionally, what's the pebble in your shoe? Mentally, what's the pebble in your shoe? You probably never had to ask yourself these questions because you're like, hey, you're sort of coasting. But as you're thinking, hey, I'm going to do awesomeness, well, then figure out what the pebble in your shoe is, train for a marathon. All those skills will convey directly over into life, into business, even into love. And then you'll be like, I'm a rock star.
Indeed. Don't we all want to live each day as a rock star doing what makes us happy? I love this analogy of being curious about the pedals in your shoes. Get curious about what is stopping you, making you hesitate, and makes you not want to be your best. The more we understand this, the easier it becomes to find a way to get back on track or finish that task you wanted to do. Of course, that process isn't going to be overnight, and sometimes we'll have moments where no matter how much we try to do more with less, our colleagues and partners may not see eye to eye with us. So what do we do? What will you do? Namju Cho reminds us that you start by honing your listening skills. Meet Namju Cho, the Director of Communications and Marketing at the Dulwich College in Seoul, South Korea. A Harvard Kennedy graduate, she is passionate about the power of PR, marketing, and brand voice, especially in nonprofit, education, and organizations with a mission. I was curious, how do you make everyone feel heard if they disagree or have different opinions? A lot of this is also behind the scenes. Namju's advice? Don't force your strategy before listening to all the situations. If we project only our own approach, then we may end up creating more work without fully knowing what is worrying colleagues or going through other colleagues' projects and bandwidth. Lesson 3, collect all the inputs and voices from all stakeholders before you execute your projects.
Writing and designing and all those things actually take a lot of research and legwork ahead of actually developing the strategy to do that. And designing something by committee is one of the toughest things I think one could do, because everyone has an opinion about look and feel and copy. And the key is really to have a chairperson that kind of engage the members and stir the conversation a certain way. But I can't tell you how many times that necessarily doesn't happen. And so the job is for me or the facilitator to kind of give clear guidelines to the group as to how we want to stir this. And, the key is don't give solutions to the design problem. Just point out what the problem is. But that often does not happen. People are like, I think it should be green, but they don't necessarily point out what's wrong with the red. And so we always tell them, try to point out the problem or the issue that's not working for you and let the designers do what they do best, which is come up with a solution.
Namju shares how at times the misconception people have of marketing, design, and PR often permits the too many cooks in the kitchen situation. It's key as the expert in the room to understand how to hear and look out for other voices, but still guide them towards results. This requires being humble, attentive, and being a great listener. As she pointed out, even if someone is saying they don't like red or green, unless she follows up to learn more, we may end up with another design or marketing strategy that the client will say they don't like. We'll just go around circles without getting to the end. I totally understand that, as I have worked with a lot of designers, illustrators, and creatives at InnovatorsBox and over the years. I realized that I have to get better at both giving clear feedback on what I want and why I want it, as well as accepting that whatever I visualize in my mind won't be exactly what they do, because they always design something so much better if I let them do their creative work. The balance of trusting your colleagues to show up with their expertise, hence, I feel, is another area where it is key to understand how to work with people with different opinions. Speaking of which, I asked why such care to messaging and marketing is key. Namju says this is because most of us don't even take enough time to speak about what we do best, as many are client-focused and not taking enough time to tell their stories.
For instance, we help with messaging. And some clients, it's easy when they just provide a direct service to needy populations. That's probably the easiest part. And it's also if they have some kind of advocacy, doing some campaign around a policy, that's also fairly straightforward. But, we had a client that it was like a support system for nonprofits working in the health equity field, doing a lot of the work from behind the scenes. And so they help them with their fundraising, accounting, leadership training. And so how do you sort of explain what they do in a layman's terms as an elevator pitch? And so going through that process, I think was very illuminating for them because they're also really humble. And social impact communication is also about how do you also take credit for some of the great work that you're doing? But a lot of folks were reluctant and they were always the first to give credit to their partners. And we're like, that's great, but you also have to think about, you have to fundraise and be financially independent. So how are you going to take credit for some of the great work that you've done and some of the great partnerships that you form and enable some of the other equity partners to get to where they were? And so those kinds of things, it's a process, and sometimes it's like therapy because they haven't been in a position to be able to talk about their impact and their contribution specifically.
I'm guilty as well. It took me time, and honestly, I'm still working on how to do a better job describing the work and the impact we do at InnovatorsBox. Since all of our work with clients in culture and leadership and team development is confidential out of respect for our clients, this means a lot of what we do, we don't write about publicly. Still, I appreciated Namju's sharing this insight. Because of that, I've also learned how to think about this lens from the beginning and throughout a project. While we don't talk about our client work or who they are in respect to the companies and leaders we work with, I do find other creative ways to speak about these topics or how we help those we serve in other ways, including through this podcast. So finding more ways to do less isn't just about work productivity. It's really thinking holistically about everything you do, which includes, of course, how you manage your time, energy, and communication. Meet David Ricciardi, President and CEO of Proximo and also my co-founder at Culture of Analytics. He started his data analytics company in 1997. In 25 years, he has helped many clients and teams rethink data strategy, governance, integration, and analytics. And throughout it all, he is constantly reminded of the importance of communication and time management. Lesson 4, design your work around your strengths. Are you doing what you do best? Are you doing projects in which you can uniquely contribute?
So kind of taking that holistic view is very, very important. So, whether I'm writing a proposal or I'm having a meeting with a customer where they're like, well, I kind of know what I want to do, but I don't really know how to make it happen. Really, every moment of every day, especially in my role as an entrepreneur and a leader, is really a moment to practice the ability to communicate and the ability to innovate and the ability to be creative. And so, I think that's the important thing. I try not to, although it does happen sometimes. It's like, oh, here's a job somebody wants us to do. We'll just take the last thing we did last time and just clone it. And sometimes that may be the right thing, but just taking that little bit of extra time and saying, what's the differences here? And what can we do now that we maybe couldn't do last year or the year before? Or what's the new value add that we can bring that will make this one even better than the last one? Just taking a little bit of time to think about things like that is, again, practicing those things live, while you're in the task, and, helps you and also helps everybody around you.
Having led his business for 25 years, this insight is really spot on. At the end of the day, we can do more with less if we are building on our strengths. Even if data analytics is something that everyone wants, if it's not something David enjoyed this much, he wouldn't be where they are today. And being more picky and selective about the projects you get involved in or how you get involved in your team projects is really important. Sure, you may not always get to choose what project you work on if you are on a team, but you could decide how to show up and contribute best with your unique insight. If you feel your tasks are not aligned to your strengths, ask your colleagues or supervisor to see how you could explore playing a role in where your strengths align to better contribute. And leaders, there are 3 pieces of advice David wants to share on how you can be more mindful in building a workplace that encourages such strength-driven team collaboration. Something he learned from having led his company for 25 years.
If I have to narrow it down to 3, I can give you 3. And I don't know if any of them are surprising in hindsight, but here we go. First of all is, you have to listen to other people. There is a danger, especially when you're, the top, you're the leader, to say, well, I'm the leader, I'm going to lead, and therefore I know best. And that may be the case in many situations, but not in all cases. So you've got to be able to listen to those around you. You've got to be able to listen to the customers. You've got to be able to go out to people that aren't affiliated with your company, that peer network. That is so super important, and you can learn a lot from them. The second thing is hiring. And again, that's something I didn't really realize in 97, but today you have to make sure that you've got the best people on your team. And how are you going to go out and find them? And how are you going to vet and make sure that they're the right person for the team? How do you evaluate them very quickly thereafter? And how do you make sure that they fit into the culture? Somebody may be good, but they may not be right for you. And that's a very important thing. So that's the second thing that I would mention. And then the third thing is really around, innovation. And I think that's about listening as well and surrounding yourself with the right team and the right peers. But, like I said, 23 years, maybe 24 years by the time somebody listens to this, in the space, in all industries, and especially the space I'm in, which is broadly technology, it changes so rapidly. The things that we were doing in 97 don't even exist anymore. So you've got to be willing and ready to adapt, and not just adapt in the year you're in, but you've got to be able to look a few years out and say, where are things going and how am I going to get there? And, otherwise you're just never going to grow. You're prone to downturns and all sorts of things that can happen to businesses over the course of a couple of decades.
The key from all 3 pieces of advice, you have to listen and be willing to adapt. A key feature to do more with less is being aware of your surroundings. To do so, you have to listen and be willing to adapt, not just for your company's sake, but also for your people and you. How you work best now will not be the same even a year later. So what's standing out to you so far as you look back at all of their advices? The key I'm being reminded of is staying hungry to want to improve. At the end of the day, we're just repeating what's been done before if we are not willing or wanting things to improve. So I ask you and challenge you again. What's something you wish you could do in fewer steps? What's something you want to do differently? How would it bring more joy and fun? The more we explore and try, the more we'll learn and find. So take a moment to identify one idea. Start there, and you'll be surprised at how that small step can make a difference. Kendall said 12 minutes? Why not start there? Thank you again for joining us today. This is Monica Kang, your host at Dear Workplace. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Thanks to David, Kendall, Samson, and Namju for sharing your stories with us. Be sure to learn more about them by clicking their name on our show notes. Next, believe it or not, we're reaching the end of Season 1 soon. Next week will be our final Season 1 episode for Dear Workplace before we take a short break in September. It's been a joy doing these conversations with you, and I hope they are inspiring you to think and try something different. In Season 2, we'll continue to research and speak with new friends to bring a new perspective. Let us know what topics you'd like us to visit or who we should invite on the show. For now, I'll see you next week, where we'll dive all into a theme we keep hearing about all the time: the future of work. So much changed in the past year because of the pandemic. Should we expect the future of work to change radically as well? Bring your questions, and I'll see you next time.
Hey there, this is Ravi Ladd, one of the audio engineers at InnovatorsBox. I hope you're enjoying Dear Workplace. A fun fact about me is that I'm also a petroleum engineer by trade and an online music production student at the Berklee College of Music. Personally, I love the insights that Dear Workplace provides me into all of my professional and creative endeavors. This show is brought together by our awesome team: producer Saren O, audio engineers Sam Lamer and myself, Kelly Gravo on marketing, website designer Akriti Pandey, graphic designer Monica Escobar, and Luke Helder on music. Dear Workplace is hosted and directed by Monica Kang, founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox. To continue the conversation of reimagining the workplace, visit us at innovatorsbox.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share. We'd love to hear what you enjoyed and your ideas for future episodes. See you next week.